When most people hear nuclear energy, they think of mushroom clouds, Chernobyl, or glowing green goo from The Simpsons. What if I told you the power generated from this glowing green radioactive goop will be one of our best tools for a better, cleaner, and more efficient future?
And look here, Inspector. Can I speak to you privately in my office?
Nuclear energy comes from splitting the nucleus of an atom, which is a process called fission. Inside a nuclear power plant, uranium atoms are bombarded with neutrons. This chain reaction releases massive heat, which turns water into steam, spinning turbines, and then it generates electricity.
Just resting my eyes. Well done. A rested employee is a vigilant employee.
Nuclear energy isn't just powerful, it's reliable, clean, and surprisingly efficient. One nuclear plant can power around 750,000 homes using just a small amount of uranium. To put that into perspective, 1 pound of uranium can generate as much as 3 million pounds of coal or nuclear energy. That's some serious output. And unlike fossil fuels, nuclear power doesn't release carbon dioxide or harmful air pollutants. It's one of the cleanest energy sources we have right now, up there with wind and solar. In 2022, nuclear power made up nearly half of America's carbon-free electricity. It runs 24/7 through heat waves, rain, or snow, making it more consistent than solar or wind energy. It's also a major economic engine. Nuclear energy supports hundreds of thousands of jobs and adds billions of dollars to the economy. And once a plant is up and running, the electricity it produces is cheap and steady, which is great for keeping energy bills low over time.
Huh? Noise! Add noise!
5 minutes before critical mass.
Critical what?
No energy source is perfect, however, and nuclear has its drawbacks. First, radioactive waste. It has been dangerous for thousands of years. Currently, most of it is stored on-site at plants because permanent national storage, like the proposed Yucca Mountain site, has been stalled for decades. Another drawback is the cost. Nuclear plants are expensive to build and can take decades to complete. Georgia's new reactor went $16 billion over budget. And then there's the fear of accidents. We all remember Chernobyl and Fukushima, but experts say that modern reactor designs are far safer, and even in Fukushima, there were no deaths directly caused by radiation exposure, only by the tsunami and natural disaster itself. While nuclear energy isn't perfect, nothing ever is when you're splitting the atom.
Now, Mr. Rude, I just want you to know I'm a good sport. If you want to make fun of my legendary love of cashews, you have at it.
Today I'm here with
Mrs. Berry?
Mr. Benson?
Ms. Berry. When you hear the term nuclear energy, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is a big cooling tower. That's just kind of what I picture. I don't know if that was watching too much of the Simpsons or something when I was a kid, but yep, my first thought is kind of that picture in my head, and then kind of green energy. That's about as good as it gets for me personally, for my opinion. I think nuclear is a great option.
I usually think of power when I think of nuclear energy, and the power that energy can be harnessed from nuclear reactions, and the inherent responsibility that comes with that.
Hi. Do you think nuclear power is a safe source of energy? Why or why not?
So, it doesn't even matter what I think. The numbers here tell us that it is statistically on a per kilowatt hour basis among the top 3 safest forms of energy production. Beaten only by, I think, solar. Even wind has more deaths per kilowatt hour because of the risk of maintaining wind installations. And nuclear has the benefit, it does have more deaths associated with it than wind does overall. But it has the benefit of being an incredible source of baseload power. So you produce so much power, and so divided by the total amount of power that it produces, it's way safer.
I think that it can be safe. I think we've had disasters in the past because of mistakes and things that maybe were misunderstood. But it needs to be properly regulated, I think, and all safety precautions need to be held. But I think that it is a safe source of energy. And I think in terms of energy sources and death rates and stuff, I've read that there actually are less death rates with nuclear energy things compared to other things. I don't know if that's true, but I'm sure we can believe them anymore. But But yeah, I think in terms of if something is, if it's safe or not, there's inherent dangers with everything that we do. So doing things responsibly, but there's consequences to everything. So nuclear energy, if it's handled properly, I think it is safe, yes.
How do you think nuclear energy compares to other energy sources like wind, solar, and fossil fuels?
Well, that's a really interesting question, I think, because nuclear energy, compared to the others, has far less carbon emissions. So for the environment, it's considered probably safe. But also, like with solar energy or with wind energy, those depend on the weather and the environment that you put them in. Whereas nuclear energy is about the nuclear reactions that take place. So. Fossil fuels, I think, are still dominant, mostly because they're easily accessible. But I think things are changing as people want to do nuclear and other energy efficient things.
You keep the environment much safer. It's very clean and stable.
So it's kind of that perfect happy medium. And it has issues, I'll acknowledge that. But it's that perfect happy medium of produces an incredible amount of baseload power, very reliably, which solar and wind at this point just can't do. They can produce an incredible amount of power. Functionally, for our purposes, infinite wind and solar. But the challenge there is intermittency, meaning it's not running all the time. So it's running all the time and produces a huge amount of power just like fossil fuels do. We can have a very similarly productive natural gas or coal-burning power plant. But what it does is it produces that energy with functionally zero associated carbon emissions. There's still carbon emissions associated with building a big structure, but during production of power, it's releasing no greenhouse gases.
Do you think nuclear waste is a major concern, or do you believe it can be safely managed?
I think it can be safely managed, but it's also one of those things that, radioactive decay, if it lasts for thousands of years, you need to pay attention to how you're storing that or the waste that's behind that. Half-life, if it lasts a long, long time. There are some countries that are doing some things deep down into the earth where they're protecting what they've done.
So I do think it can be safely managed, just based on the fact that we've been doing it for the better part of 60, 70 years in the US, with a big expansion in the 80s, but we've been doing it for decades and decades with no risk, no problem has occurred. That's not to say there couldn't be a problem, but we have good solutions for the short term, and then we've got good solutions for the long term in terms of deep geologic disposal. There's not a lot of ideal places to put that in terms of just places where people aren't going to be upset that you're burying nuclear waste in their backyard. But I think long term, that's where we'll go. But even in the short term, we've been doing it for a while. It's safely stored on site at those nuclear power plants and pretty easy to protect a big giant concrete cask of radioactive material.
I can't stand it any longer. This whole plant is insane! Insane, I tell you!
There are many myths and misconceptions that I would love to tackle in this documentary. Myth number 1, nuclear energy is unsafe. This is just simply not true. Actually, nuclear energy has one of the safest track records among energy sources. Since the 1980s, US nuclear plants have had excellent safety. Myth number 2, nuclear power can explode like a bomb. That's just blatantly false. A nuclear plant can't explode like a nuclear bomb. It's physically impossible because that's not what it was made to do. The nuclear bomb is made to explode. The nuclear power plant is made to produce energy. It is physically impossible due to how the fuel is designed. Myth number 3, radiation from plants is extremely dangerous. This is also just simply not true. Radiation levels around nuclear power plants are lower than you get from eating a banana or taking a flight. If you didn't know, you get slightly radiated when eating a banana. Small amounts, not enough to ever do anything. You don't grow limbs from eating a banana or taking a flight. And the waste that nuclear power plants produce is heavily shielded in concrete and steel and can never in any universe affect you unless you're going swimming in it. But just don't do that.
Ooh, it's time.
Simpson!
What?
You see which button I'm pushing?
Yeah. Push the button. Got it.
Nuclear power isn't flawless, but it's far from the villain many think it is. It's one of the few energy sources that's reliable, clean, and capable of supporting our growing energy needs. As we fight climate change, nuclear might just be the part of the answer, not the whole situation, but a crucial piece of the puzzle. Thank you for watching. Thank you.
Hey, I resent that. Besides, don't you think you better let the folks in on what this is all about?